Welcome, I'm James. This is the Ascendia trading card game channel. This channel is meant for a game that I've been wanting to make for more than a year now. I've been making trading cards for more than 5 years, but they never really became games because they were just kind of like ideas of what I wanted to do, and they aren't really what I want to do. So I'm coming here today with a new inspiration to make a game that yet again I've wanted to make for more than a year. And I don't really have the rules down, but I'm here to show you what the game's about. I noted down what I wanted to do for this trading card game. And before you invest your time into it, I want you to know that this is military theme. So instead of being like fantasy or like historical or sci-fi, it's more military than it is anything. So I thought about that. I was like, what are some cards that can be militarized? So I have places. So it's like there's places and there's bases. So it's like where your creatures can visit or where they can spawn into. Like it doesn't matter. It's like something to take up space. There's weapons. There's actions and tactics, and there's creatures. Obviously, it's like your Marines, or it's your like army men. It's literally anything that you can relate to about it. Now, the first card that I wanted to invest a lot of time in is your bases. So a base is the card that your entire deck is based around and is what keeps you in the game. And when a lot of you players who play Magic the Gathering, you think Commander. And yeah, I see it being Commander relatable. But instead of a Commander dying and being the target of all your spells and everything, your base is actually you as a player. So instead of you having someone who just constantly is getting beat up, you have a base that is kind of your life source, and it's nothing. You can't alter it. Like you can't turn it into something else. So your base consists of a name, an image, an ability, a type. So it's like your name, which, for example, Steam Springs, it is as its name. The type is like a type of region. I'm going to talk to you about that later. There's your image, which I don't have artwork for it yet, like digital artwork. So it's just a question mark. And then I have ability. So the ability of Steam Springs is when you deal damage to a base or place, draw a card. Now, there are two other parts of this card that not a lot of TCG players recognize. It's your base health and your base production. Now, your base health is the original amount of health your base has. So your base has, or Steam Springs, for example, has 34 base health. Now, the thing about bases is that they're not all going to be the same. They're going to be different playstyles. So your base health is going to vary from one base to the other. So like let's say this base takes more time and effort into making like a playstyle that's going to wipe out your opponents versus an aggro base, which is going to have like deal 5 damage to target creature or target place, like anything. So I'm kind of nerfing the fact that aggro is like so common, and it's like everyone wants to play aggro. So instead of, you want to think about what you play instead of having a constant play style that is just gonna erupt. Like it's never gonna nerf itself. So I decided, as a trading card developer, I wanted to make a kind of mechanic that no one can actually no one starts at the same health, but they start based on what playstyle they're playing. So like Steam Springs, you draw a card whenever you deal damage to a place or a base. So like you could technically draw almost 3 cards per turn, um, which is strong. So I turn it to 34 health, and you can't. It's that's a lower version because this game is. I want it to be a longer game and not just like a short game that you can do in 5 minutes. Like I don't want a game that's gonna last 5 minutes for 4 players, 2 players, 3. Like I don't want to do that. The second mechanic is base production. Now, base production is the original amount of energy points your base creates each turn. Now, for example, if your base has 3 each turn, you are making 3 base health or base production. My bad. Energy counters. Let's say you are making 3 energy each turn. Now, instead of being like other card games like Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh, you are investing it. So instead of like let's say turn 1 you don't have any good creatures, anything good that you can play, but you have like nothing that is really good or you can afford. So right now you only have 3. Let's say you have a spell in your hand, or not a spell, an action in your hand that has it costs 4, which no action actually costs uh, any energy, but like let's say a creature has 4 energy costs. You are now paying. You want to save that up. So like next turn you're gonna have 6. So you can afford that creature. But you're still gonna have the 2 left over. So that will carry on to the next turn. So I kind of factored bases too. So like instead of like aggro, again, uh I'll give it like 2 base health and not 5 base health. Like I don't want people just summoning, let's say for Magic, I don't want people summoning lands every turn, like 3 lands every turn based on like uh, spells you have in your deck, like that can search for lands and put them on the battlefield. um, so that's like a kind of mechanical card that I wanted to turn to a TCG. That's like the original um, basis of everything. The next card is a creature. Creatures are the defenders of your base, but also the invaders to take down your opponents. A lot of people know creatures like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. There's creatures are basically in every card game. There's no card game that has no creatures or no characters that in that game. So creatures consist of a name, a creature type showing what kind of creature it is, like an Aqua, a Geo, and Iron Mark, which are all like races from D&D players might uh, relate as like so elves or golems or dwarves or like it's these are like races, like they're not like um types of, or yeah, they're like different types of creatures. There's its cost and type, so it's like this is its cost. I couldn't put like an icon of a wave on it because there wasn't enough room for me, but it's showing how much energy is needed to cast this creature and what its classification is. So like this guy, Steam Springs, is a water. It's a water type, and this guy right here is a Salt Ninja. It's a Aqua and a water type. So its creature type is an Aqua, but its actual association is a water type. It is not Aqua. So instead of being based on each like race, it's actually the type. So if the card says um, draw a card for each water type you control, you draw a card like for Salt Ninja because you have one of these guys, not an Aqua. There are cards that will say like, let's say Aqua will draw a card for each Aqua. That's different. Um, there's the power and guard, which show how much damage it deals and how much it can take. The ability, obviously, with the art, the what the Salt Ninja can do. The influence. Uh, the influence is a new mechanic. Sorry. Influence is in the top right corner. It's always going to be there unless I change it to the template of the card, but it will always be there. Influence is also another mechanic that I constructed where the influence of a card you play, like this, affects your influence points, which basically lets you play cards from your influence. Now, you might be questioning, what is your influence? Influences are, think of Pokemon. If you go to Pokemon, you're playing to get prize cards, right? You kill a creature, you get a prize card. So it's basically that. Your influence can be paid besides energy to play like new prize cards, and you can play your opponent's thing influence too. So instead of, like, let's say you have a good card that you want to play for your influence, you can, and your influence is high enough. So let's say an influence card you control is 6, right? As 6, its cost is 6. You pay 6 of your influence, and your influence decreases by that number, and you get that card. Put it in your hand. You can play the next turn. Um, or I don't know. I haven't really constructed an influence, but it's kind of like when you bring a villain or a criminal into your army, your people of that country are not going to like you as much. They're not going to like that you brung an evil person into your army to fight for our country, like to represent them. They're not going to like that. So your influence that you play each creature kind of like dictates what you can do next turn. Or your prize cards. It's like different. It's different for each play style. Then you have action and tactics, which come after creatures. They are the individual abilities or cards that can turn a game around. And to some people that might not be so serious, but to some it actually is. The action consists of a name, its influence again, its image and ability, and its action identification, which shows that it's in action. Now, you might be wondering, why is there no cost on this? Why is there... Well, I don't want people to have to constantly play for actions, like, because your base produces so little. So if I want to play a creature, I can't pay for an action too. So I have this thing where you can only play 3 actions unless your base or any other place says so. Your action can only be played during your turn. It cannot be played any other time unless it has a mechanic again. You can only cast 3 actions per turn though. So again, like I said, you can only cast 3 actions. And actions don't cost you any points. Again, what I said earlier. Tactics are like traps. So like if anyone from Yu-Gi-Oh, you are thinking tactics are kind of like traps. Um, they consist of the name and influence, its image, and its ability. All the normal things for a card. But there are 2 different things. There's the tactic identification, which shows that it's a tactic, and there's the triggering play, which is a certain play would trigger the tactic, like when your opponent draws a card or when a creature deals damage to your base, you would activate this. So, for example, this vapor spray has tactic identification and this trigger play. So its trigger play is when an action is active, ability activates. Disable the ability of the action, but the action still plays. So like that's a little confusing, but the action that you play, or the action that action, like it doesn't activate after every action, but it would activate uh when an action is active. It's like a tongue twister. I don't know if you know how hard that is to say, but um the action can happen. It can be active. It can be any other action. It doesn't have to be the first action that activates. It could be any action that it's kind of like the distinguisher. So I just thought that, like, kind of like when a country doesn't want you to take a certain place, they're gonna put down some stuff that you can't just walk by. Then I have another card that comes after that. It's called a place. Places are the other bases that help your creatures and strategies. So that's kind of, it's like a mini base. Now, it has its name, its type, its place identification, which shows it's a place, its ability, its image, its cost, everything. And then it has a new mechanic which is called base production add, which adds your base production. Like I said earlier, when we were talking about bases. When you play a card like Observatory, your base production of Observatory is going to be +2. So when I'm playing Observatory with Steam Springs, I'm not going to have 5 each turn. So I can play a 5 energy creature next turn, and you can invest this base production too. So instead of being every turn you like refresh, Observatory still invests that. You have the cost and type and place identification, and this place has, when you attack each turn, you may draw a card equal to the amount of damage you dealt to a base. So this is like drawing control, but its influence would deal down, so it would minus your influence, which would bring down points. Finally, we have weapons, which are like the upgrades to your creature. Weapons consist of name, image, ability, weapon identification, which shows its weapon, its cost, and its type. Weapons can also bend the rules to a lot of the game, which is kind of scary, but the name, Salt Stars, which is, its type is a water. Showing it's a weapon, the identification, the image, and the ability. Now, why I call it a weapon instead of a item is that there is something in the game that is, in this game, instead of equipping it, you arm it. So instead of, you arm a creature with an artifact. I don't have it on this thing because this is just thrown up like in 2 days. So I had really little time to do it. I'm kind of busy, but um, this would say like arm equal 2 energy or arm equal 1 energy. And the ability is, when you attack with armed creature, armed again, deal 2 damage to any other target. So I would deal 2 damage. Let's say if I'm attacking with Salt Ninja, right? I could deal another 2 damage to any other target. So like your base, like an opponent base, or a creature, or a place, or a, like, it could be anything that is health related. So thank you for watching AscendiaTCG, and that's the end of episode 1, introduction.